Step 6 to becoming a more prepared citizen. If you have one of these, but you don't have one of these, you might be a gun dummy. Now, you might think that this is common sense, but I've had this conversation a few times when people ask, why would you own a firearm? And I say, you wouldn't own a house without owning fire extinguishers, right? And twice now, I've been met with the same deer in headlights stare. And I was like, do you not have fire extinguishers in your home? So you might be surprised how many people are ill-equipped in this regard. And this video series is for people who are starting from zero and moving onward. So we're going to talk about all the basics. Now, for a lot of people, moving from home or even from some apartments where these things are provided, it might not have ever been a concept or just a thought that crossed your mind. So let's talk today about fire safety. According to the NFPA, there are nearly 360,000 home-based fires a year, but luckily, not many of those end in death. Only around 3,400 according to injuryfactsmc.org. Even though bleeding causes far more deaths per year than fires, that could be due to the fact that culturally it is a lot more normalized for people to be prepared for a home fire than to be prepared for massive hemorrhage. So keep these things in mind as we talk about the ranking and order of the things you should be prepared for. Obviously, if you have no fire safety measures whatsoever, your likelihood of dying from a fire is going to be way higher than normal. So we also rank this fairly high because even if there is no loss of life in a fire, people lose their entire livelihoods this way. So as far as levels of severity, these are the reasons why I selected fire safety as number 6 on our list. So what do we need to have? First of all, fire alarms. These should already be provided if you're renting, considering most areas it's illegal for a landlord to rent a building without these fire safety measures. But if you're moving into your own home or maybe renovating an old building, you might have to do some updating or complete replacement of these systems. Also, a lot of these new alarms are sealed units that you can't actually change the battery on. So in that case, you need to make sure that your unit is still within the expiration date. But of course, it doesn't hurt to double check. Make sure everything's functioning fully. And in some cases, you might want to add some alarms to your current arrangement. Maybe your fire code is a little bit more lenient than the actual recommended amount of fire alarms to have in your home. So here's a good opportunity to connect to your local community. Call your fire department, ask what the amount and location of recommended fire alarms and carbon monoxide alarms is, and then get to know them a little bit. Ask who the fire chief is, ask if there's any local upcoming fundraisers, and get yourself plugged in. Let's hit multiple birds with one stone. I mentioned carbon monoxide detectors. They're usually associated with this topic because you can buy alarms that are 2-in-1, and that's usually the easiest way to go about it. Second, you need fire extinguishers. The type and placement and amount of these depends on the types of fires you're concerned about. I personally have a cooking and kitchen extinguisher located in my kitchen and a general extinguisher located centrally on each floor of my house. I also have an auto extinguisher under the passenger seat of each of my vehicles. So in the case that I get in an accident or I see an accident or maybe I just come across a small fire that I might be able to assist in, I have something available to use. After all, if you're like me and you have a long commute, the chances of coming across some sort of an accident are actually pretty good. So again, you might think this step is common sense, or maybe you just realized how ill-prepared you are. Now, if you're starting from zero, this step can be somewhat expensive. I think I spent upwards of $600 outfitting my home when I purchased it. I replaced all the old alarms and I bought all new extinguishers. So please get yourself sorted out with this step. It doesn't help to be prepared for everything the world might throw at you if a small, preventable fire burns it all to ash. I personally have had to use a fire extinguisher a couple times in my life, and I was very glad to have them. And I'm sure some of you have as well. Why don't you leave those stories down in the comments? But that's all I've got for today's step. So, we're getting most of the less exhilarating steps knocked off this list, and we're getting towards the fun ones. Stay tuned. Step 6.